Sorry, is there a problem?
The witness had a long night and was requesting if she could have had her coffee with her instead of water, and I cleared it with counsel to the commission, but I heard it was taken from her.
Well, I don't have a problem with her having a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
if that makes you feel more
neither did
comfortable.
Neither did Mr. Maraj, so well, I did clear it with him. So.
Can we arrange for someone to let her have a cup of coffee?
She asked her coffee.
I didn't get time to drink it on the way. I was so nervous. I'm sorry.
First of all, there is absolutely no need to be nervous, all right? We're all sitting down. We're not wearing wigs and gowns like they do in some places, all right? So you relax. I'll arrange for you to have a cup of coffee. You're going to take the oath first. This gentleman's going to ask you to take the oath. And once he's done that, you sit down. We'll wait for the coffee to arrive, all right? And then we'll make a start.
Sure,
okay?
Thank you.
I,
Catherine Balkisoon,
solemnly swear
that the evidence
I shall give to the Commission
in this case
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
Oh, thank you.
So, first of all, while the coffee's being arranged for you, is that your coffee?
Yes, it's kind of attached to me since, well, I don't know, since I started working.
All right. Well, look, you use that whenever you feel you need to.
Thank you.
There's water there also for you.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, let me apologise. I understand you were scheduled to give your evidence yesterday.
Yes.
That has been delayed, no doubt has added to your nerves. All right, but as I've said, there's no need to be nervous. If for any reason you need to take a short break or anything like that, you just indicate that to me, okay, and then we'll make sure that you have one.
Oh,
okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. So first of all, what's going to happen? Ms. Maharaj, who sits opposite you, is going to summarise the statement that you've made and provided to us, all right? That will serve as your evidence in chief, as we call it, as if you'd given it yourself, delivered it here. But it's quicker to do it that way, all right? But you know, I am assuming, what is in your statement.
Yes, but it was written a long time
well,
ago.
Look, of course, but if anyone refers to any part of it, you'll get a copy of it and be put in front of you, all right? So you'll be able to see what it's not a memory test, all right? We're trying to get to truth here. So if you need it to answer any question, all you need to do is ask, all right? And we'll make sure you have it.
Okay,
right?
Thank you.
So Ms. Maharaj is going to read a summary of your evidence. Listen to it carefully, please. If you agree with that summary, you'll tell her so. If there's something you disagree with, you'll let us know, all right?
Sure.
After that, there'll be some questions from Mr. Maharaj, who sits opposite you also. He'll ask you some questions on behalf of the Commission. After that, there'll be a number of other lawyers, not all of them, but some of them who may want to ask you questions, all right? So we'll take it from there one step at a time. One way or the other, you will conclude your evidence today, all right?
Okay, good.
All right. All right, good.
Christmas.
So please relax. Don't worry about it. And Ms. Maharaj will now deliver the summary.
Thank you. Ms. Catherine Balkisoon submitted a witness statement to the Commission dated 16th August 2022. It's in the witness statement bundle at page 1327. Ms. Balkisoon has been acting in the position of technical lead at Paria since November 2021. She reports to Mr. Michael Wee, the technical maintenance manager. Ms. Balkisoon first learnt of the incident involving the 5 divers through Mr. Wee on Friday the 25th February at 3:55 p.m. He indicated that Mr. Piper may require assistance. She immediately called Mr. Colin Piper, who asked her to come on site. The incident command team had to be convened under Mr. Piper as a designated incident commander in response to the incident, which could be classified as a major emergency. The incident command team's designated incident command post is a shipping building at Paria's premises in Pointe-a-Pierre. Ms. Balkisoon arrived at Paria around 5 p.m. on Friday. She attended an incident management meeting at the shipping building and was again informed of the incident and that water searches were being conducted. Mr. Terence Rampersad Singh, Paria's maintenance planner, and Ms. Balkisoon then left for Berth 6. While on her way to Berth 6, she observed a retrieved diver, who she later learned was Christopher Budram, being transported in a vessel heading towards shore. Her role in the aftermath of the incident was to provide on-site logistical and technical assistance and support to the search and rescue efforts. to update the incident command team on her observations and information from on-site, and to act as the liaison where necessary between persons on site and the IMT and vice versa. Upon arrival at berth number 6 at about 6 p.m., Ms. Balkisoon called Mr. Paul Yearwood, Paria's HSC coordinator, and requested lights, and she introduced herself to Mr. Dexter Guerra, LMCS's construction supervisor. She stated that upon her arrival at berth 6, she observed both Paria and Kenson personnel on site, including HSC operations and maintenance personnel. She observed persons who appeared to be LMCS divers in the water and going back and forth in and out of the water. She also observed that the air compressor was running and concluded that the hyperbaric habitat was unlikely to have been flooded. Ms. Balkisoon observed LMCS persons huddled together looking at something small being held by one of them. Ms. Balkisoon was informed by Paria's HSC personnel that a GoPro camera was recovered, and she requested that same be secured if possible. She was also informed that a scuba tank was recovered from within the chamber. Between 6 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., Ms. Balkisoon was informed by Andrew Farah, LMCS's dive supervisor, that LMCS was running out of scuba air, and their divers with diving equipment were trying to make their way from Carenage. Ms. Balkisoon made attempts to seek assistance for an escort for LMCS's divers and to source additional scuba tanks. She called Mr. Paul Yearwood for such assistance. She observed LMCS divers in the water in the vicinity of the hyperbaric chamber, and that visibility was decreasing due to the time of night. She tried to source additional lighting. However, she observed that lights from Paria's tugs and vessel were used to assist with visibility. After 7 p.m., Mr. Piper instructed Ms. Balkisoon that further diving was unsafe and not allowed. She placed her phone on the loudspeaker so Mr. Piper's instructions was audible to the persons around, and she relayed the instructions to the group of LMCS personnel, which included Mr. Dexter Guerra. Some of the said LMCS personnel reacted in a hostile manner. At this time, divers were still in the water, and no diver came out of the water or stopped diving after Ms. Balkisoon delivered Mr. Piper's instructions. Ms. Balkisoon informed Mr. Piper that despite his instructions, persons continued diving. Mr. Piper asked whether he should call security. Ms. Balkisoon responded that he shouldn't, as calling security would make things worse. To her knowledge, no instruction was given by Mr. Piper or anyone else to the Coast Guard or any Paria security personnel to enforce Mr. Piper's instructions. She states that while she was on berth 6, no officer of the Coast Guard, no member of Paria security, or any other person did anything to enforce Mr. Piper's instructions. A ROV camera arrived at around 7:35 p.m., but LMCS dive supervisor Andrew Farah advised it was too big to fit into the pipe and would not work. Around the same time, representatives of Professional Inspection Services Limited arrived with a camera. However, it could not be used as it did not have sufficient light, and the theta line was about 100 feet. Around 8 p.m., LMCS personnel indicate they were hearing knocking sounds from the vicinity of berth 5, and they wanted to open the flange. Ms. Balkisoon passed this information on to Mr. Piper. Ms. Balkisoon herself did not hear such sounds. Around 8:30 p.m. and 9 p.m., Ms. Balkisoon spoke with the Coast Guard and showed Lieutenant Hargreaves the cut riser on the crane barge so he could understand the size of the pipeline. However, he indicated that a dive rescue was too risky and the Coast Guard were not trained nor had the equipment to perform commercial dives. Around 9:15 p.m., Mr. Kazim Ali Sr. told Mr. Piper and Ms. Balkisoon about the knocking sounds reportedly being heard at berth number 5 and requested that LMCS be permitted to install the topside riser and remove the flange at berth number 5. Around 10 p.m., Ms. Balkisoon observed LMCS divers entering the water to install the topside to the lower piece of the riser. Ms. Balkisoon stated that Mr. Piper told her that Mr. Boudram had indicated that he came across 2 air pockets and 2 weld seams on his way out. At around 11 p.m., Mr. Piper instructed Ms. Balkisoon to not remove the flange at berth 5, and he also instructed that the cover from the habitat needed to be removed. Ms. Balkissoon indicated that between 10:30 to 11 p.m. she spoke several times to the Coast Guard officers providing updates. Around midnight, a new borescope camera was used in the pipeline. Ms. Balkissoon was advised that the camera did not show any air pockets or signs of missing divers, and they could not proceed beyond a further point in the pipe. Between midnight and 1 a.m. on Saturday, 26 February, Ms. Balkissoon asked the incident management team whether the flange at Berth 5 should be removed, as requested by Mr. Kazim Ali Sr. However, she was told by the incident management team to stand down on that activity as they were waiting on camera assessments. At 2:15 a.m., Lieutenant Hargreaves of the Coast Guard asked to be stood down, and Ms. Balkissoon referred him to the incident command team who would make that decision. At around 3 a.m., Ms. Balkissoon observed that a pipeline crawler with a camera was inserted inside the riser at Berth number 6. She was informed that the crawler could not move past a scuba tank that blocked the pipe. At around 3:35 a.m., she called Mr. Yearwood to inquire about sourcing additional oxygen tanks, as Mr. Andrew Farad indicated that while the decompression chamber was available for Mr. Budram on the vessel Gulfstream Eagle, 3 additional tanks of oxygen were needed. However, Ms. Balkissoon was subsequently informed that the tanks were no longer necessary. At around 4:30 a.m., Ms. Balkissoon was instructed by the incident command team to proceed with the removal of the blank flange at Berth 5. Around 6 a.m., the crawler was inserted into the riser at Berth 5. The crawler went in vertically, but then the camera went black due to the presence of oil at the bottom of the riser. Ms. Balkissoon stated that around 9:45 a.m. she attended a meeting with Mr. Kazim Ali Sr., Mr. Wee, and Mr. Piper in the shipping building. Mr. Kazim Ali Sr. indicated that the migration barrier was moved and dropped into the sea, and LMCS was in the process of taking out the inflatable plug when the incident occurred. She explains that around lunchtime she went to the offshore control room and requested an operator, Mr. Narayan, to perform a water and oil dip at Berth number 5 in order to determine if the inflatable plug was really intact or acting as a seal within the pipeline. He reported to Ms. Balkissoon that 1 foot of oily emulsion was detected, which meant that there was some water in the oil. Ms. Balkissoon relayed this information to the incident management team. Around 5:45 p.m. on Saturday, 26 February, a meeting was held with the incident command team to outline a plan for the night shift that included the removal of the chamber, installations of booms at Berth 6, removal of oil on the top of the riser, and pumping out of water from Berth number 6. Ms. Balkissoon indicated that this plan was intended to determine whether a rescue dive into the pipeline from Berth 6 could be accomplished after removal of the chamber and any oil and any obstruction in the line. At around 10:30 a.m. on 27 February, a brief session was conducted to follow up on the plan from Saturday to clear the line. The plan was to fill the riser at Berth number 5 with water using the Lang pump to move the oil from the horizontal part of Sea Line 36 so that the oil could be pumped out of the line into the Lorena B vessel, which was at Berth 6. However, during the course of the morning, Ms. Balkissoon was informed that the operation by Paria had changed to focus on the recovery of the divers. At around 12:40 p.m., Ms. Balkissoon requested the video footage which had been collected so that it could be used by the incident command team in a risk assessment for a dive operation proposed by LMCS. At about 2 p.m., Ms. Balkissoon requested operator Mr. Narayan to perform water and oil dip at Berths 5 and 6. The result of this dip showed that the water level was higher at one end of the pipeline than the other, and it meant that the inflatable plug was acting as a seal. She said this meant that the horizontal part of the line was likely filled with fluid, and this in turn would eliminate any air pockets. She also stated that the inflatable plug could be used as a water displacement device to assist in the recovery. At 3 p.m., the Paria and Heritage engineers and Ms. Balkissoon commenced technical evaluation preparation of risk assessment and operation procedure documents associated with a water displacement exercise using the inflatable plug that was already in the line. Around 7:15 p.m., during an IMT meeting, Ms. Balkissoon was informed of the requirement to commence on-site activities to recover the bodies of the 4 divers at 4:30 a.m. on Monday. 28th February. Ms. Balkison was involved in the recovery efforts for the bodies of the divers from Monday the 28th February to Wednesday the 2nd of March, and she gave details of those efforts in her witness statements. Ms. Balkison, is that an accurate summary of your witness statements?
Yes, but there's just one mistake. The Lorena B can't fit at berth 6.
Sorry, say that again. Pull the whole thing towards you a little bit. That's it, yes.
The Lorena B, which is a vessel that we use, can't fit at berth 6. So that would have been at berth 5. I don't know if I... Yeah.
Right. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That aside, you agree with the summary of your evidence, do you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Before Mr. Maharaj asks you some questions, can I just establish, please, your experience and your qualifications? I think you've been in the industry for some years.
Well, yes.
Well, don't be shy. Just tell me, please, how many years have you been in the industry?
I would have started working in Petrotrin from probably 1998.
From 98?
Yes.
So
all the way through in the refinery until it was shut down.
Right.
And then I would have moved over into Paria. My degree is in chemical and process engineering, but I would have worked also in
Right, I'm going to have
operations.
to ask you to do what I asked Miss Maharaj, is to just slow down a little bit, please, because I struggle to keep up
sorry.
with the speed at which you speak, all right?
Sorry.
So, no, it's very clear. It's just a little fast for me, and I want to try and make a note as well. So, just remind us, you've done about 25 years or so in the industry.
Correct.
Right. And were you at Paria when it was first created?
Yes.
And your role there has been described as a technical lead, is that right?
Well, when I started Paria, I would have been in operations.
Right.
As the onshore lead.
Right. And now, you're there still, I take it?
Yes, and I'm the technical lead now.
You're the
acting.
technical lead now, and you were at the time of this incident?
Yes.
Right. And you told us about your qualifications. As technical lead, what does that require you, in broad terms, in a couple of sentences, to do?
Right. As technical lead, I'm the technical authority on site. So that means scope of works, inspection falls under me, the lab, all the engineering services.
Right.
Right.
It's a substantial job.
Yes, it is.
Well, marvellous. All right, thank you very much. I needed to know that because the questions that are going to be asking you, so that everybody else knows, you're not just passing information when you were on site on that day, passing information. You have an expertise of your own to bring to bear.
I have an expertise in process engineering, yes.
Yes, thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Maharaj.
Ms. Balkison, I want you to relax and I want you to try and help us in answering some of the questions, okay?
Sure.
Would it be correct to say that Paria on that date had a written, documented incident command system to manage major emergencies?
Yes, we have a policy.
That it's documented?
The policy is documented. We have taken, okay.
And would you agree with me that the accident which occurred on the 25th of February this year, in which the 5 divers were sucked into that 30-inch diameter pipeline, was a major emergency?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I want to refer you to Paria Incident Command System, which has been documented, and it's in Core Bundle 1 at page 107.
One 107.
107.
Thank you.
And you see at page 107, mini heading, Incident Command System for Major Emergencies, after the heading Paria.
Yes.
Right. And I'll just, you see the second paragraph, well, I'm sorry, the second sentence, Paria shall therefore develop and implement emergency response plans for all credible emergency situations that may arise. The incident command system is utilized for scenarios such as impact of tropical storms or hurricanes, major fires, offshore spills, and other major emergencies. You see that?
Yes.
And then you see the principles behind managing a response to an emergency are, and it has a few, and the first one is safeguarding human life.
Agreed.
So would you agree with me that in accordance with the principles in the incident command system, which is documented by Paria, its paramount aim in managing a major emergency is to safeguard human life?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you go to page 107A, the next page, I see your name at number 7, Catherine Balkisoon, onshore lead. You were a member of the incident management team, am I correct?
On that night, yes.
Yes, right. And there is a diagram at page 107E which shows the structure of the IMT on that night. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if you go to page 107B, at paragraph 1.0, the objects of this plan are, and it has several, but I'll refer you to the first one, to ensure that there is a clear, documented plan for responding to major emergencies.
Yes.
Do you understand this to mean that in respect of any major emergency which can arise from any one of the works or operations which are being done, there should be a documented plan for responding to a major emergency?
Yes.
Yes. Did Paria have any plan to respond to any emergency arising from an active Delta P hazard situation?
No.
No. You are aware now, at least now after the incident, that the accident was caused by a latent Delta P hazard which became active when the plug.
Sorry, you want to repeat that? The accident was caused.
You're aware, you became aware after this accident that the accident was caused by a latent Delta P hazard which became active on the 25th of February when the inflatable plug was removed.
Well, is that the root cause? Meaning that the plug was removed, causing the, I don't know if you want me to explain further, right? But when that plug was removed, the mechanical plug, and as they were in the process of removing the inflatable plug, right, the accident occurred which pulled the man in.
Yes, yes. So,
right? So I'm sorry if I'm a little bit technical.
No, all I'm asking you, after this accident occurred,
yes,
in the position you occupied on the IMT,
yes,
you became aware that the accident was caused by an active Delta P situation.
You see, I'm not saying that because...
But you want to tell us what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you mind, because I want to assist as much as I could, right? And, well, I'm more accustomed to math than English, right? So let me explain, right? I'm allowed to do that? Or because at the time, if you remove the mechanical plug, and if you're in the process of removing the inflatable plug, right? Because I hear you say about a latent Delta P, which, okay, no problem, but we have latent risks everywhere, in a tank, etc. So I don't want to say, and that's why I asked you if that's the root cause.
Well,
see?
let's see if we can shorten this.
Yes.
You understand what Delta P is, don't you?
Yes.
Right. There's a differential in pressure between one side of a barrier
Correct.
and the other.
Correct.
Right. There was there not?
Yes.
We now know a differential
Yes.
in pressure
Yes.
between one side of the plug and the other.
Correct.
Right. When you removed the plug, it wanted to equalise.
Correct.
That causes a problem,
Yes.
and it sucked the men into the pipe.
Yes.
Proceed.
Much obliged, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry. But,
So I'll be correct in saying, because I've looked, Paria did not have any emergency, well, any,
no, we didn't.
you didn't have any plan.
Yeah.
Now, according to,
Before you move on, do you now?
No.
according to page 107C, when you look at 107C,
Yes.
at paragraph 5.1, you see at the middle of the paragraph, just a heading, the ice in dark, it's darkened. The ICS is activated by and mobilized upon notification of an emergency. See that?
Say that again. 107C. Which paragraph?
107C under 505.1. You see at about fourth paragraphs, it's darkened. The ICS is activated by and mobilized upon notification of an emergency.
Yes.
So am I correct to interpret that to mean that if you do not have a plan before to deal with a situation, if there is such an emergency, the ICS is activated, so a plan can be devised to deal with the emergency?
No, the ICS is activated whenever we have an emergency. Whether or not, because we do have emergency response plans for fires,
Okay.
for other.
Okay, so the ICS is activated whenever you have an emergency.
Yes.
Right. So on that date, you didn't have a written plan to deal with the emergency. So was the ICS activated then?
Yes.
Yes. And that is how you all had meetings. The IMT met.
Yes.
Yes. Now, at page 107D, under incident action plans,
Yes.
do you see for simple at about lines 5, for simple incidents, the plan may be oral or written. Large or complex incidents will require that the action plan be documented.
Yes.
Okay. In this matter, have regard to the position you occupy, your experience, would you regard this incident that occurred on the 25th as a simple incident or a large or complex incident?
Large and complex.
A large or complex incident. But it says there, large or complex incident will require that the action plan be documented.
Yes, it does.
But you did not have a documented plan.
No, we
No,
don't have
no.
a documented plan.
So would I be correct to say then that in devising a plan on that date, because you all were trying to devise an action plan to deal with this emergency,
Correct.
so you were treating it like a simple incident?
No, you would not be correct to
You're
say
not
that.
treating it like a simple incident. But since this incident occurred, have steps been taken by Paria to have a plan to deal with Delta P? A written plan to deal with the Delta P emergency?
No.
No.
Do you think they should?
I think we should engineer out the possibility of the impact of a Delta P in this situation.
Certainly you should try and do that. But in the event you fail, do you not think you should have an emergency plan to deal with it if you fail to engineer out the prospect?
I don't think that we could ever come up with an acceptable emergency plan to rescue someone in there. That's my opinion. I haven't had.
That's not quite the same thing, is it? Having a contingency plan, an emergency plan, to deal with the various types of Delta P situations that might exist, different forms. Do you not think it'd be worthwhile having some sort of plan to deal with that?
Well, there's a little bit of misunderstanding, really, right? Because we do have Delta P situations all through the plant. When we pump in, that's a Delta P.
Yes.
And so on. So a pumping emergency response plan could have been a loss of containment, a leak, which we do have. We have plans to deal with those things. But the Delta P, as it pertains to this particular event, right? I mean, I prepared to engineer it out, right? There's, to the best of my knowledge, I'm unsure if we could ever have an emergency plan such that, you know.
Right, so that I understand, please.
Yes.
You're saying that you think it's not possible to have a plan that could deal with a Delta P situation. It's simply not something that you could document in a way that you could action.
I, to the best of my knowledge and my expertise, I don't think there's anything that, and I mean, it's something that sits with me every day. Yeah? I don't think there's anything that I could have done more to have an emergency response plan such that you can make it safe for someone to enter and so on. That's my opinion.
I'm not sure I do understand what you're saying, and I don't want to misrepresent you. I don't want to misrepresent you. Do you think that it is worth trying to find a plan that could deal with such an emergency for the future or not?
Yes, it's worth trying to find a plan.
Thank you. Have you?
No.
That's all I want to know. Thank you very much.
Ms. Balkisoon, you told us this morning you have been with Petrotrin and then you have been with Paria, okay?
Yes.
You have been working with Petrotrin and then you continue to work at Paria, correct?
Yes.
Petrotrin, well, let's say Paria is engaged in having works like this, which was being done on the 25th of February, in which risers were being cut and replaced underwater in hyperbaric chamber.
Yes.
And would you agree that from the experience you have and for the qualifications you have, that if you have a hyperbaric chamber underwater and you have to cut pipe and replace pipe, there comes a situation in which you could have differential pressure in the pipe and in the habitat?
There are many ways to handle a Delta P. That's what I'm saying. I would have engineered it out.
Right. There are
no,
many
differential.
Okay, sorry. No, sorry, go ahead.
Well, okay, because let's look
Yes,
at the habitat, right?
There are many ways to handle a Delta P. And therefore, if you have such works being done, there are ways to handle it.
Yes.
But would you not agree that in creating an emergency response, you will have to have a plan to be able to know what are the risks, and the risk must not occur, and therefore, if the accident occurs, how you would deal with the accident?
Yes, but we don't, okay, like, for example, right? Even the document that you keep referring me to, that incident command system, if you look at 107, right, and I'm not trying to be facetious, all right, but if you look at number 107, right, Paria shall therefore develop and implement emergency response plan for all credible...
Sorry, where are we? Forgive me, Ms. Bugs.
That's page 107, she said.
Yeah.
Page 107, I think it's at the top of the page, the second sentence.
Yeah, I'll try to slow down, right? Paria shall develop and implement emergency response plans for all credible emergency situations that may arise, right? What I'm trying to explain, right, is that by having the compressor on and flooding and pushing on the liquid on the other sides, right? That is a sort of a delta P, right? Because at that point in time, you're relying on the compressor to ensure the chamber is dry, right? The risk involved is if the compressor trips, it comes flooded, so you'll have an emergency response plan to address that. What I'm trying to say, and maybe I'm not explaining very well, is that inside a pipe, if you have two forms of barrier, right? And that those barriers are such that, and we could talk about, well, okay, we could try to engineer now, flood it, whatever it is, right? If those two barriers are in place, then to have an emergency response plan that entails someone trying to go in to do certain things, it's not something that, I mean, we could try to get one, but it's not something that I'm in a comfortable place to ever have to do again. So my preference would have tried to engineer out the risk. You understand? So like in trying to explain more, right?
No,
like,
I think I get you. I mean, it obviously makes sense to try and prevent anything from happening.
correct.
Right? That's what you mean by when you say engineering out the risk. So, for example, in a plant that has gas and oil, one of the potential dangers is fire or even
Yes,
explosion.
correct.
So you try and engineer out the prospects of that happening, minimize it to its bare minimum. So that
Correct.
there will always be a potential risk,
Yes,
but you try and engineer it out, don't you?
yes.
What I think Mr. Maharaj is trying to get at with you is that there is, in pipes and the kind of work that is part of Paria's operation, there are likely to be delta P situations from time to time. Like you said yourself, even the hyperbaric chamber itself is a sort of differential pressure
Yes.
between what's in the chamber and what's outside the chamber.
Correct.
Right? Of course, we understand that. Well, we do now. I confess straight away, I didn't before, but I do now. And so what I want, and I think Mr. Maharaj is getting at, is that given that there are those latent risks inevitably on the site that is Paria, whilst at the one hand you would want to engineer out as best you can those risks, there remains a latent risk. And I think all that we're trying to get at is that given that there is a latent risk, why don't we have a plan to deal with that in the event that you haven't managed to engineer it out? It isn't the first time, is it, that somebody has died as a result of delta P, is it?
No.
Well, not at Paria, but I'm saying in the world.
Well, it's the first time, to my knowledge, that someone has died in a pipe.
Well, they die in a variety of different potential ways, given that delta P exists in different environments.
Yes.
We've learnt that much prior to your coming to give your evidence. So it's really a question of whether or not there is a plan to try and deal with it should you fail to prevent the act happening in the first place, like you do with fire or explosion.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
well, I can only say we don't have one.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So, where are we? We've recognised that there isn't one, and we're now looking at seeing what might have been foreseen. Well,
Yes.
the fact that you recognise, I mean, you've heard of delta P, you know what it is.
Yes.
You probably knew it a lot longer than I have, right?
Yes. But I mean, thinking back, like, I wouldn't have known delta P as it relates to, I'm not a diver or anything,
No.
right? But, I mean, you do know that there is a delta P situation across,
Right.
inherently. One side is higher than the other. So that's what delta P is, difference in pressure.
Yeah. We have it in an aerosol can.
Yeah.
Quite. All right.
Much obliged. Okay, so there is no plan. This accident occurred. So at the IMT, you all were trying to come up with a plan in order to deal with this emergency.
Based on our ICT training and so on, yes.
Yes. Now, I just want to ask you, in the IMT that existed, did you all have drills at all over the period of time to deal with emergencies that may happen?
We don't have drills per se. What we have is that we run like a tabletop, but not a full drill to say that we go out and we have the full IMT in place. However, unfortunately, we have had a number of instances, at least for myself, since I've been at Paria, at least more than 5.
And those drills are drills to sort of show what you must do in an emergency response in respect of certain scenarios.
Not only to show what we must do, to identify if we have any gaps, to see if the timing and so on is on point, if everybody knows what they're supposed to do. It provides also a little bit of training for our operator guys. So there are a number of reasons why you do drills, and that also is one of them, yes.
Did you all, and you keep records of these drills? You keep their record of the drills and what you do?
That would be lodged with HSC. Because it would be part of the HSC.
Yes, but there'll be written records, contemporaneous records.
Yes.
Did you all ever had any drill to deal with a Delta P hazard in a pipeline where men could be sucked into the pipeline?
No.
No. As a member of the IMT on that date, would you agree that your role, because you were sent by Mr. Piper to Berth 6 to monitor what was happening after the accident, am I correct?
It was not just to monitor what was happening after the incident.
Well,
okay.
Tell me what your role there was as a member of the IMT.
Okay, so I would have gone outside to also provide first-hand knowledge, a direct line of what's happening on site to Mr. Piper, right? In the event that, because that particular role calls for directing any tactical operations and so on. So in the event there was a plan to be actioned on site, that's what I would have been there to do, right? I also would have been able to identify what resources they had on site, find out if see if there's anything on site that would have been needed further that was not being provided, and pass that up to the incident commander, right? So that's how the IMT works, right?
So were you interested on that date in assessing whether any rescue efforts could have been made that day to rescue the divers?
I would have been interested in finding out what resources were available, right?
And the resources would be there, what, commercial diving equipment?
Yes.
Commercial divers?
Divers, yes.
And willing divers?
Yes.
Experienced divers?
No, because there's another section called planning, right? So at the end of the day, when I get information, I pass it up to the incident commander. The incident commander, together with his planning and so on, persons would have determined what level of competency is required in order to execute a plan.
But you would pass the information as to whether on site there are experienced divers.
I don't have records, sir, of competency. I won't know that.
But would you not be involved in talking to divers, interviewing divers who are available and want to go into the waters?
No, I would have been talking to Andrew Farah, who was the dive supervisor from LMCS.
So you're only talking to Andrew Farah.
Yes.
How many hours you spent at Berth 6 that evening? From what I saw, you went there at about 6 o'clock, am I correct?
Correct.
What time did you leave?
6 the next day.
6 the next day. And during that period of time,
Yes.
you saw people were diving.
I saw people were diving, yes.
And did you consider that one of your ways to assist the IMT was to try to see whether there would be willing divers to effect a rescue?
Yes, and that information was passed up.
And that information was passed. Who you passed that information to?
Colin.
To Colin. Around what time you passed that information? You first passed that information to him?
That would have been probably around as early as when I came on site, I saw them in the water, right? And that early as probably around 7.
Around 7.
Yes.
Now, in paragraph 8 of your witness statement, you have it there before you?
I have something called Core Bundle
Okay,
Volume
no,
1.
I think you have. You get it now.
Sorry. Paragraph 8.
You said at
It's page 1329.
yes, 1329. I'm sorry.
Sure.
You see at that is when you were heading. You started heading to the shipping building on your arrival, and later on, you said that you left and you were going to Berth 6. You see that?
Paragraph 8.
Look about 3 lines to the end of the paragraph. While on my way to Berth 6,
Yes.
I observed a retrieve diver who later I learned to be Christopher Budram being transported in a vessel heading towards the shore, correct?
Yes.
So whilst you were going to Berth 6, you observed that at that time you may not have known the name of the diver, but you observed that one of the divers was rescued and was going on shore.
Yes.
Right. The purpose of you going to Berth 6 at that time was to assist the IMT in giving them information. And part of that assistance would be to see whether the men, wherever they would be, could be rescued.
Yes.
And therefore, you would have seen one diver returning to shore, and therefore you would have, your paramount aim that day would have been to save human life, not so?
And preserve human life.
And
yes.
preserve human life. So you saw him going on shore. Did you know where the other divers were at that time?
In the very instant, no.
No. How long after you knew where they were?
As soon as I arrived.
As soon as you arrived.
Because I would not. So I'm coming to the berth, and I'm seeing him heading this way. I would not have known where he came from, right? I don't know if he was picked up from sea surge or so.
But you knew he was one of the rescue divers.
Well, I knew someone was injured, yes.
But you knew he was one of the rescue divers. Am I correct?
I did not know he was a rescue diver, no.
You said-
All I knew is my.
You said I observed a retrieve diver who I later learned was Christopher Budram.
Yes.
So you knew then that he was one of the was a retrieve driver.
Retrieved, yes.
Yes. So when you saw him and you knew he was one of the divers, did you consider it important for you to give direction to turn around and to go with him and get information about the other divers?
No, because he was heading to shore. And at shore, they would have had support staff there also.
So as far
And
as you
then-
were concerned, you didn't consider it important at that time to get information from Christopher Budram, well, that retrieve diver, as to where the other divers were.
Because it would have been my understanding if someone came out and was heading towards shore in an injured state, whatever information he could have in that time would have already been communicated, and then he would have headed to shore where
In
He could have
paragraph
been
9 of your
speaking
witness
to-
statement, you said that you considered your role in the aftermath of the incident to provide on-site logistical and technical assistance and support to the search and rescue efforts.
Yes.
So if that
Yes.
was your aim, would you not think it was important on seeing him to get, did you consider it an urgent matter, that quick action, time was of the essence?
Well, I thought it might be more important to head to the site where perhaps they had more people being injured. Who were injured and needed assistance. If I'm seeing,
But if you went with him, you would have assisted in getting the information quicker to the IMT.
no, because I would not have known who's on the tug or the vessel with him that was going and carrying him, right? The on-site commander, right, would have, it's not me alone, on that, in that moment, you would have had other Paria people there, other Kenson people there, just because I personally would not have asked the vessel to turn around and go for me to jump on to another vessel to get information. That doesn't mean information wasn't sought.
But did you have another member of the IMT with you?
At that, no.
Yeah. Was Mr. Harry Sharan with you at that time?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
But he was not a member of the IMT. He was not a member of the IMT, was he?
He would have been there prior to my arrival.
So you had Mr. Harry Charan there where you
Yes.
were going,
Yes.
and you were the member of the IMT.
Yes.
Would you not agree with me that for the IMT to get quick information, if you would have gone with Mr. Budram, and whatever information you could have got, the condition, where he was rescued, all the relevant information, you could have given it to Mr. Piper immediately?
I'm not sure, because you're asking me to ask in that moment how much information I would have received from Mr. Budram and so on. And I don't know if that would have been my best route at that time. I could only tell you what I did.
Can I ask you, you said in answer to... That's all right. Do you need a break? No, okay. You said in answer to Mr. Maharaj that you thought that there were support staff at shore ready to receive him.
Yes.
Yes. So what did you anticipate the support staff would be doing?
When they received him?
Yes.
Well, making sure to sterilize him.
Yes.
Because I don't know what condition he would have been in, right?
Sure.
And then also arranging for him to go into the ambulance and, if possible, seeking more information.
Yes. So, and probably in that order, I imagine.
Yes.
So, first of all, make sure he's okay. Whatever needs to be done medically is attended to.
Yes.
And then to make sure he was whisked off to the hospital by ambulance.
Correct.
And then to try and ensure that you had as much information from that man as you could possibly obtain, given the lack of knowledge of what had happened.
Yeah, and given his ability to impart that knowledge, yes.
Yeah, well, obviously it would depend on his condition. If he was unconscious,
Correct.
he couldn't have done very much.
True.
But the fact remains is that those were the sorts of things that you would have expected to happen.
Yes.
And part of the reason, I suppose, why you didn't feel it necessary to turn around and join him.
Yes.
Right, gotcha.
Now, when you reached Berth 6, you saw LMCS divers in the water, correct?
Yes.
Around what time you would have reached Berth 6?
Around 6.
Around 6. And during the time you were at Berth 6, would I be correct from what I see in your witness statements from paragraph 12 onwards, that you were assisting the divers to get scuba tank, etc.?
Yes.
Yes.
What? Yes.
Yeah? Sorry?
Yes.
Yes. At that time, you saw them diving in the open waters.
I can't see inside the hyperbaric.
I know you couldn't see inside the
Yeah.
hyperbaric, so it's open waters. But at that time, you knew that the other divers were in the pipeline.
Yes.
Yes. And you would assume, although you were not seeing them diving in the pipeline, that they were diving in an effort to try and see what they could do to rescue the divers.
Yes.
And you were trying to help them in that process.
Well, not by going in the pipe or anything. Huh? I mean,
No, by providing by providing this by providing the scuba tanks and etc.
yes.
Yes, yes. Having arrived at Berth 6 at about 6, would I be correct to say that you saw did some of the divers talk to you? When you arrived.
When I came onto Berth 6?
Yeah.
When I came onto Berth 6, well, I don't know how much you know, right? But Berth 6 is like the platform on top.
Yes.
But the divers and so on would have been more associated with the barge.
On the barge.
So
and you went on the barge?
Yeah.
Yes. And when you went on the barge, was that the LMCS barge?
That was the Sunny Day.
I'm sorry?
I think it's called the Sunny Day or something. I can't remember the name of the barge.
And you would have spoken to the LMCS divers?
I would have spoken to Andrew and Dexter.
Andrew Farah and
and
Dexter Guerra.
Yeah.
And at some stage, they wanted to get lighting, and you assisted in getting lighting. Am I correct? Or?
Well, I noticed it was getting dark, right? And so as soon as I came, I thought it was getting dark, right? And I asked, I think, HSC to organize some lights. And when I went on the barge, it was still getting dark, and we didn't have any lighting towers and so on, right? So I think I called Michael, who was in logistics, to try and get some lights. And I also spoke to
Michael?
We?
Yes. I wonder if I could ask you to use the surnames. I know you know them, obviously, by their first names, but it helped me because there are sometimes the same
true, yes.
name. So it would just help me to know who we're talking about. So
Yeah, sorry.
if you would, please. That's all right.
Yeah. So I would have asked Michael Wee to help me to get some lighting and so on, because we do have on shore, we have lighting towers, right? But in the absence of that, I also asked operations people, because those vessels, like the tugs and the launches, they do have lights in front. So I asked them if they could have just positioned themselves so we could have actually, see better.
So you were facilitating the lighting in order to assist the divers in whatever rescue efforts they were making.
Whatever rescue efforts that we could have done that night, yes.
Yeah. And those were the divers from LMCS?
At the time, yes.
Yes. There were no divers from Paria at that time?
No.
And as you said, you couldn't see where they were diving, if they were diving in the chamber or not. But as far as you were concerned, at that time you knew the men were in the pipeline and you were assisting them to do whatever rescue they could have done.
Yes.
Yeah. But you got a call at around 7 p.m.
Yes.
From who? Mr. Piper?
From Mr. Piper.
And he told you that the divers should not be allowed to dive in the pipe.
Well, he didn't say, to the best of my memory, that divers were not allowed in the pipe. Huh? From my best recollection, he used the words stop diving, or words to that effect, right?
No diving at all.
Well, he didn't say no diving at all, but he didn't, to me, in that moment, he didn't say don't go into the pipe.
Well, your paragraph 15 of your statement says that at 7 o'clock, Mr. Piper called you to instruct you that
Yes.
further diving was unsafe,
Yes.
not allowed, or words to that effect.
Correct.
And that was his instruction.
Correct.
Right. He didn't differentiate, did he, according to what you say there, between the pipe, the chamber, or the open ocean?
No, he
No.
didn't.
No diving. That's it.
No diving because it was unsafe.
Yeah. Now, I understand why he's saying it, but
Yeah.
that's what you understood to be his instruction.
Yes.
Thank you.
So at 7 p.m., you knew that Christopher Budram was in the pipe and he had come out alive, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Whilst you were there, did you also found out that Michael Kurban had gone into the pipe and had come out alive?
I knew that Mr. Kurban was diving, and I knew that around that time they would have recovered items.
I'm sorry?
I knew they would have recovered like a tank and a GoPro.
Yeah, but
So
weren't you aware that he had gone into the pipe?
it was told to me that he went in the pipe. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't,
He told you that?
No, he didn't. Other people did. Some
Other people
yeah.
did?
He was in the water, still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did you talk to him about going into the pipe, what the condition was in the pipe? And
At
things
that
like
moment in time, no.
No. Were you interested to find that out from him?
At that moment in time,
Yeah.
no. At 7 o'clock you're talking, right?
Yeah. At any time, were you interested to find out that from him?
Later on,
Around what time?
while he was and this is my memory, right? Later on, when he was
Take your time. I know this must be very difficult, so I take your time to try to help us.
yeah. So later on, I mean, that night was very difficult, right? And it continued to be a difficult. So later on, when I saw him sitting on one of the, well, it's a bollard, you call it, right? And he was just sitting there in his coveralls, and I mean, he was very distraught, right? I went up to him and asked him, well, because I didn't know it was his father at the time, right? I remember I don't know any of the LMCS people really, right? I went up just to ask him, well, you okay? That kind of thing. And in that course of that conversation, he said, well, I went in the pipe, so I asked him, well, he said he couldn't go in that far. But, I mean, that conversation was all tied up together with, his dad and so on, right? So it wasn't information that we didn't have already.
What time?
That would have been like very early in the morning or sometime. It was way after. Because, yeah.
The early
yeah.
hours of the morning.
Yeah, because, I mean, rain started to fall too, and we were all trying to huddle. And
But let me see if I could jog your memory. You remember Mr. Hargraves came there at some time?
It would have been after Hargraves and they left.
No, but you remember he came there at some time.
Yes.
Remember he came around what time?
He came around 8:30, 9.
8, 9. And didn't you introduce Mr. Hargraves to him and to tell Mr. Hargraves this is one of the men who would know?
I introduced him because I knew he was one of the divers in the water. So I said, look, this is one of the divers in the water, right? This is one of the people that would have assisted Mr. Budram, and that was the extent of my...
But you are the representative of the IMT
Yes.
at the scene to
Yes.
help the IMT to get relevant information
Yes.
to possibly send divers into the pipeline.
Yes.
And you knew, let's say you knew just before 8 o'clock.
Well,
When over at 8 o'clock.
if suppose
when
so, okay.
Yes. Did you not think that you should have talked to Mr. Kurban to find out what he saw in the pipe, in order to give that information to the IMT?
He didn't come out in oil or anything, eh? This is Mr. Kurban you're talking about, right?
Yeah, he didn't come out in oil or anything.
He didn't come out in oil or anything.
No, but you knew he had gone into the pipe.
No, I was told that I don't know how far he went or if there's anything. And you have to understand too, eh?
But were you interested to find out how far he went?
To the best of my knowledge, he might have only gone in just at the corner because that is where they said they got the tank and the
That is where they say they got the tank? Who they?
LMCS.
Who?
Someone in LMCS. Remember, I didn't speak to Kurban directly. He was in the water at the time.
No, but he came out of the water.
Yes, sometime later. I don't know when.
And you
Sometime
introduced
later,
him to Mr. Hargraves?
Well, there's different sorts of introduction. Huh? There is, the chairman is over there. Please go speak to him. And there is, good afternoon, sir. This is Mr. Lynch. This is Mr. Ramesh. So there are different kinds of introduction.
Okay.
And at that point in time, Mr. Kurban was not in the best state of mind. Well, I don't want to,
But were
it's
you
not somebody
aware,
I would have gone up to.
were you aware that his father was in the pipeline?
No, sir, not at that time.
Did you
I'm not familiar with.
Did you communicate the information about Mr. Kurban to the IMT on that night, on the Friday night?
The information about Mr. Kurban, too?
Yeah. To the IMT.
Which information that is?
The information that you found out that Mr. Kurban had gone into the pipe and had come out alive, and he didn't have oil on him.
I would have, if you go back to my statement, right? When I said,
What paragraph?
just now, looking for it. You see, when I said that people are in and out the pipe, the in and out, and I wasn't sure where they were, that would have been, where did I say this? Hold on. And they had something like a GoPro. That is when I told them. You see. Is it 12?
Paragraph 12.
Yeah, I'm not very familiar. Yeah, right? So in here, I knew that people were diving in and out, right? You understand?
You see, one of the good things, if I can say that, about your statement is that you put it chronologically in terms of time, and you give in almost every paragraph, you deal with the time that you're dealing with. Do you follow?
Yes.
Which is very helpful, if I may say so. All right? But in paragraph 12, you don't actually give a time. What you say in paragraph 12 at the end is, I was informed by Paria-LMCS personnel, whose name I do not remember, that a GoPro camera was recovered.
Yes.
I requested the said HSE personnel to secure the same if possible. I was also informed that a scuba tank was recovered from within the chamber. You see that?
Yes.
Right. So, given that that is between paragraphs which deal with 6 o'clock and 6:30, is that when you discovered that there had recovered, someone had recovered
Yes.
apparently a GoPro
Yes,
camera
and that's when I
and
called.
a tank?
Yeah, and that's when I called Colin
Right.
Piper.
So you told him that
Yes.
at sometime between 6 and 6:30.
Yes.
Right. So it follows from that you must have been told, obviously, in order to tell him.
Yes.
Right.
But
Do you recall who told you?
no, it would have been a HSC person at that time. But
Right.
With respect to speaking to Kurban, Mr. Kurban, right, and knowing that it was his dad and so on.
No, you've told us that. I got that bit. What I'm interested in, what Mr. Maharajan is interested in knowing is, when you got that information, did you understand from where it had come?
I would have assumed it came from inside the chamber, inside the pipe.
Someone has obviously been in the pipe
Correct.
and have recovered these items.
Yes.
Did you ask who?
No, I didn't ask who.
Did you think it prudent to ask who?
They were only, at that time, early, they only had about 3 people there,
Yes.
which would have been, I don't know their names.
No, it doesn't matter who their names are. I just want to understand. Did you not think it important? You knew that about between 6 and 6:30, that less than an hour earlier, a man had been recovered from the pipe.
Correct.
You knew that time was of the essence.
Yes.
And you now know that somebody else had been in the pipe to retrieve these items.
Yes.
Did you not think it prudent to find out directly from that person, if at all possible, what they observed having gone in the pipe, so that you could relay that back to the IMT?
So if you look immediately after, which
Yes.
was 13, I did go to Andrew.
Yes, you did.
Right, and I did speak to him. I didn't ask him because the diver's in the water. I didn't go to Kurban and ask him, well, what did you see? How far it is, and so on. I didn't ask him that. I went to Andrew and I asked him, look, what else you need? At that time, I didn't ask him, what did I see? What did he see? I didn't ask him that.
No.
I'm telling you.
No, I understand, and I appreciate your honesty about it. But just think about it now, right?
Yes.
You knew a man had emerged from the pipe some hours after the first incident.
Yes.
He was whisked off to hospital.
Yes.
You knew that another person had gone into the pipe and had recovered a number of items from inside the pipe.
Yes.
And you would understand that it was important for the IMT to know as much as they possibly could about the conditions in that pipe.
Yes.
Yeah?
I also.
So, just a minute, please. So, is it the case then that you didn't find out firsthand from the person who went into the pipe what the conditions were? That's the first question.
No, I didn't find out.
Did you find out from Mr. Farah, Andrew Farah, as to what he knew about the conditions in the pipe following Mr. Kurban going in?
No, but there's a but.
Yes, I imagine there would be.
Okay, so, but at that time, right, I'm seeing divers in the water, and I know that there's an LMCS dive supervisor there, Andrew, right? And I would have understood that they were going in the pipe and so on, right? And they were doing what they could to rescue whoever they could have rescued. I didn't find out at that time, or until probably later too, about, well, what were the conditions in the pipe? Because at that time, Andrew's diving. Andrew is organizing his divers to go on. I didn't know.
The problem I have with that, Miss Balkisoon, is this:
Sure.
is that within half an hour of that or so, you had
Yes.
Mr. Piper issuing an instruction to you and
Yes.
all the other divers: do not go in the water. No diving allowed. It is unsafe.
Correct.
That is what he was telling you.
Yes, he was.
Surely it would have been incumbent upon you to have found out everything you could
Right.
from those who had been in the pipe to tell him that. You made the observation in answer to Mr. Maharaj a little while ago that it didn't appear to you as if Mr. Kurban was covered in oil.
No, he didn't.
Right. Well, that was quite an important factor, don't you think, to have relayed that information to the IMT?
No, but the IMT would have, well, I'm making an assumption and I shouldn't. But I do know that Mr. Budram, because I was told, had oil all over him. I also, no, I'm just...
No, we understand that. Yeah. You were told that. When were you told that?
When I arrived on site.
Right, okay. So he had oil all over him.
So he had oil all over him, right? And we didn't know what caused it. at that time, I didn't know what caused it. Right?
What caused the oil to be over him, or
No,
why
what
he was there?
what caused the event? Right? I didn't know that. I do know that one person had oil, one person didn't.
Yes.
Right? So when Colin called to say stop diving, and he says it's not safe to do so, right? It's not only whether or not someone came up with no oil on them, huh?
But did you tell him that? You see, what we're trying to find out is what information was being relayed to the IMT and what they were doing with the information they had. Did you say to Mr. Piper, when he was giving you the instruction at 7 o'clock, no diving because it was unsafe, did you say to him, look, there's been a man who's only within the last half an hour been inside that pipe, he's recovered a tank, he's recovered a GoPro, it didn't appear to me to be covered in oil. Did you give him that information?
So at 7, when he said stop diving, and I would have walked away. I would have walked away and took my phone off speaker. I would have, at 7 o'clock, he said stop diving.
Yes.
Right? So my phone was on speaker, right? And when my phone was on speaker, I wanted everybody to hear also because it's directly, so there's no miscommunication too. And he said, look, stop diving because it's not safe, or words to that effect. And by that time, obviously, people were not happy. I took my phone off and I walked away. And then, because I asked Colin, when you say diving, I mean, I'm not a robot to go like, okay, stop diving. I want to know, when you say stop diving, why? What's the reason?
What did he say?
Because it's not safe. We don't know the conditions. We don't know how much oil in there.
Exactly.
Wait, no. And we,
Fair enough.
And we also don't know if it is that the condition still existed, right? I told him about the GoPro and thing, whatever, that was earlier, so he knew that.
You did tell him that?
Yes, earlier. Sometime earlier I told him, right? But in the heat of the moment, if someone says, okay, you're on site, you see people diving, right? I didn't stop. You notice, I didn't stop them initially because, well, why not? Because I'm seeing Andrew there, and he's diving, right? Moving on, right? Sometime after, I talked to Colin and I said, well, look, we covered XYZ, right? Then he calls me later, which is what I have. He says, look, stop diving because it's not safe. You don't know what's going on in there. And then I go, well, okay, hold up. Yeah, I really don't know. It's not that they have fallen into the pipe and can't get out. It's more than that. I don't know if something could have happened more, right? And you have to recognize, too, that I don't know even if Mr. Boudram came up with an amount of oil. I don't know where that oil pocket was. I do know it's fuel oil, and I do know, I mean, you can't really swim in fuel oil. So this is how it was. I'm sorry if I don't have the answers you want to hear, but that's all.
I don't have any particular answer I want to hear. I do have particular questions, but I'm going to leave it to Mr. Maharaj to ask.
Sure.
So let's see if I can get this from another way. During the time you were there that evening, did you have any instructions, or did you believe Mr. Piper wanted to find out what was the condition in the pipe from Mr. Kurban?
From Mr. Kurban?
Yes.
No.
No. You had no instructions from Mr. Piper to get from Mr. Kurban what the condition in the pipe was when he went in?
No.
No. And it would be correct to say from what you were telling us today that you were not interested to find out from Mr. Kurban what was the condition in the pipe when he went in.
Say it again. I was not interested.
I'll take my time and I'll repeat the question.
Sure.
Okay. On that date when you were there, you did not consider it important for you to find out from Mr. Kurban what was the condition in the pipeline when he went in the pipeline?
I didn't ask him.
I did not.
Ask him.
And you did not consider it important to ask him?
In hindsight, I can't say if it was important at the time or not, but I didn't ask him.
But on hindsight, do you think that you should have asked him?
Yes.
And that you should have communicated that, but if you asked him and he had given you answers, communicated that to the IMT?
Yes, but. It's a but. Right?
And you considered that that would have been relevant for the IMT to consider in order to make decisions in respect to any rescue plan that they have?
The information that could have been provided by Mr. Kurban would not have been enough for us to de-risk.
How do you know?
Because, no, because he didn't have any oil on him, huh?
Sorry?
He didn't have any oil on him.
Yes, but unless you know what he was going to tell you, how could you possibly determine whether that information was enough or even just some contribution towards the overall information?
I didn't say it wasn't a contribution. I said that it wouldn't have been enough.
Yeah, well, what did you understand the information to be?
I understood that he would have gone down in the vertical and some very small part of the horizontal.
Right.
And I understood that he would have come out without oil. And I also understood at the time, right, that the ocean would have come into the pipeline, and thus that could have explained the presence of water. I would not have known, right, how far that water is versus oil, but I do know as far as he went, had water. And that's what I understood.
Okay.
Yes, but you had no idea what he might tell you about visibility, about potential obstacles, whether he could see into to what extent he could see in the pipeline, anything like that at all.
Yes, and I believe I answered.
No, you don't know about those things because you didn't ask him.
No, and I said that, yeah.
But you agree with me that if you wanted to get the full information of what was in the pipe, you could have got it from Christopher Boudram.
No, not the full information, no.
Not the full information.
No, not the full information, no.
Do you know that he spent 2 hours in the pipeline?
Closer to 3.
Huh?
Yep, correct.
Correct.
Closer to 3.
All right?
Closer to 3.
Yep. You're correct.
Yeah, closer to 3.
It was about 2 3/4 hours he was in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And do you consider Mr. Boudram could have given you important, relevant information to know what was the condition in the pipeline at that time?
I consider his information important, yes.
And you had a golden opportunity to turn around and go and meet him when you saw that he was a retrieve diver.
I had an opportunity, yes, but the opportunity could have made itself available to others also.
If I may say so, I don't think it unreasonable for you to have approached that, taken that view, given that there were people on shore who might have gone with him.
Yeah.
And you were entitled to assume that somebody would go with him.
Yeah.
It didn't need you.
No, I didn't.
Did you ascertain whether anyone did actually go with him?
No, but later on, Colin did call me to let me know what Mr. Boudram said, right? He called me and he told me that he spoke to Mr. Boudram.
Sadly, that was about 5 hours after he'd come out of the pipe.
Yeah.
A little bit late, don't you think?
Yes.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry, and I really ought to let you do your job.
Though I just wanted to know if you wanted to ask. Miss Balkisoon, while you were there at around 7:30 p.m., you saw LMCS placing diving equipment on the barge.
Yes.
And you would have known that that was to be used to assist them in dives to rescue the men.
Well, yes.
Yeah. And you are familiar with the evidence given by Lieutenant Hargreaves
No.
in this matter? At paragraph 7 of his witness statement at WSB 3010, supplemental witness bundle at paragraph 7.
3,010?
It's not in your bundle. Soon it's not in your bundle.
It's a supplemental
okay.
bundle. It's on the screen.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
And you see in the last paragraph of his statement at that paragraph, referring to you, he said she also identified other persons who possessed first-hand information about the incident, including Michael Kurban, the son of one of the missing divers.
Yes.
So you recognize that Kurban had first-hand information of what was in the pipe.
Well, he has first-hand information of the incident, right? Including Mr. Kurban, yes.
At paragraph 72 of Mr. Piper's witness statement, at paragraph 72, page 1359.
That is in your bundle.
Okay.
That is in the bundle.
What page, sorry?
1359.
59.
Paragraph 72.
Okay.
It said, Catherine, that is you, and Visham Harishan operated as the eyes and ears of the ICT on the scene as described above. I liaised regularly with Visham, particularly during the hours following the incident on the Friday, and I used them both to pass requests and instructions to LMCS and information to the TTCJ and others. Catherine also performed a critical technical role in the assessment of the pipeline conditions and the execution of the recovery efforts. So according to him, you performed a critical role in the assessment of the pipeline conditions on that day. And you could have got those conditions from both Budram, when you saw him coming while you were going, and you could have got it from Michael Kurban. Can you tell us why you did not do that?
No, I can't, but I could also say that the same paragraph says that he's also liaising with Visham. Huh?
Sorry?
It's not to say he might not have had the information, because Visham operated as the eyes and ears also.
But look at the last sentence. Catherine
Yes.
also performed a critical technical role
Yes.
in the assessment of the pipeline conditions and the
Yes.
execution of the recovery efforts. What he was saying, as I understand it, they were relying upon you, you were playing an important role to assist them in getting the pipeline conditions so that they can assess and you can make recommendations or assess recovery efforts.
Yes. However, right? I can't say if Colin never got it or not. I'm not making excuses. I know I didn't tell him, except for later on, around 7 o'clock, when I walked away and I asked him. Right. I didn't tell him anything that says I spoke to Mr. Kurban or anything like that. And it's what I've answered before, to the best of my knowledge.
I mean, did you understand your role to be that which Mr. Maharaj has identified from Mr. Piper's statement? Did you understand that to be the case? He's saying you performed a critical technical role in assessing the pipeline conditions so that a recovery could be effected.
Yes.
You understood that to be your role?
I understood, yes.
Thank you.
Also, Ms. Balkisoon, at paragraph 35 of Mr. Piper's statement at page 1353, his last sentence, he said, I relied on Catherine and Visham in particular to provide me with regular, real-time information on all observations and developments at the scene of the incident offshore, and to communicate requests and, where applicable, instructions to LMCS, the Trinidad Coast Guard, and other personnel on the scene. So he relied on you and Visham in particular to provide him with information on all observations and developments at the scene.
Yes.
Was that correct? Is that an accurate statement of Mr. Piper?
Yes, he relied, yes.
Yeah.
For on-scene information, yes.
Did you discharge that duty?
Yes.
You think you discharged that duty?
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you consider, well, whilst you were there, you were seeing the equipments which were being brought on by LMCS, the diving equipment, correct?
Scuba.
Scuba. Didn't you also see later on commercial equipment?
I saw the commercial vessels, the Water World, and the...
And you knew they had commercial equipment?
Yes.
Yes. And that commercial equipment were available for divers to attempt a rescue if they were permitted?
That the diving equipment was available, yes.
Yes, because the vessels remained there all night.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is from around 7
I think one came around 7, and one came about an hour later.
From around 7.
Around 7.
There was commercial.
Yeah, around.
Divers at the sea.
Yes.
And whilst you were there, you knew that the Coast Guard had taken the position that they were not going to dive in the pipeline because they were not trained for that and they didn't have the equipment to do that.
Yes, I spoke to Mr. Graves.
And while you were there on that afternoon, you knew that LMCS had divers who were experienced, commercial divers, available with commercial equipment, prepared to do a rescue.
Yes. But I won't have intimate knowledge of their experience and competencies.
I know,
okay.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
just, you know.
The fact is that I'm not blaming you for that at all. What I'm trying to get the information. They were there and they were prepared to do a rescue if called upon to do a rescue.
Sure.
Yeah.
But this coincided, this first arrival of commercial divers and equipment coincided, did it not, if not exactly, but pretty closely, with the instruction that you were receiving from Mr. Piper that nobody should dive?
Well, exactly so.
Yes. Did you tell Mr. Piper, look, whatever you might think of LMCS, we've got some commercial people here now who really appear to know what they're doing. They're coming with I think one of the boats is called Spearfish.
No, the Spearfish had a
Oh, that's the Water World. Now, Water World,
Okay.
forgive me, thank you. Waterworld, I think, was one of those that arrived. Is that
Yes.
right? And they had, as you told Mr. Maharaj, commercial diving equipment and commercial divers, or at least they were asserting as such.
Mm-hmm.
Did you tell Mr. Piper that?
Yes.
Can you remember when?
No, as it in real time. I would.
As it happened?
As it happened, yeah.
So he would have been aware, as far as you're concerned, he would have been aware in and around 7 o'clock that there were commercial divers and commercial equipment available on site.
Yes. It would have been, they came not around, well, I didn't, I'm not sure about the 7, because around 7 is when he told me stop diving, right? So it wasn't in that same conversation.
No,
eh?
I didn't mean to imply that. It was
Okay.
in and around the same time. He told you no divers, and then shortly after
Yeah,
that,
yes,
these
that's-
commercial divers arrived.
Correct.
Right. And you would have told him in real time that that's the position.
Yeah, correct.
Did he change the instruction to you about permitting diving?
No.
No.
Much obliged. Apart from Michael Kurban, who was one of LMCS, well, who was a diver there too, did you speak to Ronald Ramuta?
No, I don't remember speaking.
Did you see him there? Do you know whether a person by the name of Ronald Ramuta was there?
No, I only really spoke to Andrew Farah.
Well, did you see a man called Conan Bedo?
No, I don't.
Corey Crawford?
No, I'm not going to say they weren't there because they had a group of people there.
But you don't know them by name.
Yes.
So the LMCS had a group of people there who stated they were divers, but you don't know their names.
No, and the interaction wasn't between the group of divers and so on. Andrew Farah would have had his crew of divers there, if for want of a better word.
Andrew Farah had what?
I would say a crew,
A crew of divers.
if that's the word for it.
That's the collective noun, apparently, for divers. Well, it is now, anyway.
Do apologize. And I mean, math is a little bit easier for me. You know, this is very intimidating.
Were you there when, according to Andrew Farah, but I want to put it to you, were you there when Paria and Kenson officials was telling Andrew Farah that they cannot dive?
I didn't see anybody telling Andrew Farah he can't dive. I don't know. I don't understand the question because
you may not have been there at that time. In
well,
fairness to you.
I was there on the barge that entire night, and during that night,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Because you were there on the barge after Christopher Boudram was rescued, correct?
Yes.
And that would have been at a later time. Did Andrew Farah talk to you about a rescue plan that they had devised to go into the pipeline?
And Andrew told me, Andrew Farah told me that he had divers and they had commercial equipment and they were willing to go in to do a dive and they want to do a rescue. That's the conversation.
And you told him you were not in charge, and you kept telling him that you would communicate their requests to your superiors.
Well, I spoke to Colin about it, Colin Piper about it. But
And what happened when you spoke to him? What was the response?
he said to stand down. He told me to stand down.
Stand down.
Well, don't say, well, not, the decision wouldn't have been changed to that. If that's a better way of saying
And
it.
according to my instructions, they made several requests of that, and they were told to stand down several times.
At the very start, around 7, right? They asked to dive. That would have been around 7. And then sometime after, and that would have been after they got the, when I saw the people with the commercial people came, he asked. Andrew Farah asked, right? And I told him stand down, and I'm in charge. Let me talk to Colin, Piper, about it, right? So, definition of several. It's not like it was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say, you know that Are We There Yet movie? where it was like, are you there yet? Are you there yet? That every minute asking. He wasn't asking me like that, if that's what you mean by several. I don't know.
Okay.
He did ask me more than once.
He did ask you more than
Yeah.
once. And the answer was the same. You had to contact your superiors.
The answer would have been the same. Now, I did call Colin Piper and ask him to, but I wouldn't have called Colin after that first one, and I think Andrew may probably ask me once again sometime later, and that was it.
And you were aware that when he couldn't get through with you, he tried to talk to the Coast Guard also. You're aware of that?
No.
I just want to refer you to paragraph 46 of Mr. Farah's statement to put it to you what he said. That would be at page 449 onwards. Could help me with it. At page 449. I'll read from paragraph 43 what he said. You will see it there on the board.
Okay.
I kept going back to Catherine, and she kept saying that we don't have permission.
Okay.
Just stand down. She said that they themselves had additional equipment coming down. She said that a camera was going to come in. It was back and forth with the Paria persons. Their position was to stand down. Is that an accurate statement of Mr. Farah?
Well, I don't know what he meant by back and forth. So I can't comment on his statement. I'm just saying, all I'm saying is that the time I said that sometime after, when we had the commercial diving equipment there, he did ask me, right? And I told him to stand down. Well, he said the same thing.
And you really
right?
do not know what he means by back and forth?
Well, this implies that he's coming up to me all the time asking me the same question, which didn't happen.
And it could mean a few times too.
And it could mean a few times. It could also mean as he's coming to talk to me, and I'm talking to him about, because I said that we have additional thing. He could have also been coming in, and I don't want to comment on his thing, but there were numerous conversations about I giving him status updates and so on. So I don't want to say what he meant by that. I should ask him that. All I could say is that he asked me after, which is probably this time, because the additional equipment would have been after the commercial equipment would have been here, right? That would have been the camera, I think, right? And I did tell him stand down. Right?
Was it your understanding that Mr. Piper's position at that stage was that nothing should happen until the camera arrived?
Well, yes, because he wanted to see.
I mean, did he tell you that?
He did not say nothing to happen until the camera arrived. He said he wanted to assess the conditions of the pipe inside. Yeah, so,
yeah. The amount to that. He said stand down.
Yeah.
He meant by that and had issued us an instruction at 7 o'clock that there should be no diving.
Correct. But this is after.
I'm sorry?
This is after in the 43 when I told Mr. Farah to stand down. This is after that 7 o'clock.
No. The position hadn't changed, is what I was going to say, is that his position was it was too dangerous to dive and therefore it should not happen. And that was an instruction he issued to you to issue to everybody else,
Yes.
which you dutifully did.
Yes.
The point I think we're after here is the extent to which you conveyed to him that there were now commercial divers and equipment on site.
Yes.
And as Mr. Maharaj has suggested, that Mr. Farah is saying he tried to speak to you or did speak to you back and forth a number of times about effecting some sort of permission to dive. You say you don't recall that being the position. It's not the case.
I'm saying, right, and well, Andrew, Mr. Farah saying the same thing. I'm saying that at the point in time when I spoke to Mr. Farah about stand down, I apparently said to Mr. Farah that they have additional equipment coming, which is a camera.
Yes. So you told him that?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
So why would he come? Okay, I don't want to comment on his.
No, all right. I understand your reticence, and I don't press it. What I'm interested in knowing is this. You had a basic instruction, no diving. You conveyed that to everybody. You were being told, in effect, that a camera was due to arrive.
Correct.
And and that is why there should be no diving until the camera has had a look in the pipe, so you'd know the conditions.
Correct.
Right. So that was the position that you understood it to be, and that's what you passed on to Andrew Farah.
Yes.
Right. Did you have any notion as to when the camera would arrive?
It would have been. No, I didn't. I wouldn't have known at that time how long it would take. But they would. I don't remember asking them if it's a 30 minutes, an hour or so. But I was under the impression it's coming soon.
You were under the impression it was coming soon.
Yes.
That's when you were told.
Yes.
Can you remember when Mr. Piper told you about this camera?
That would have been early because you see, that would have been after the first set of cameras, the first set that didn't work that came on site.
Boroscope.
Yes. So this would have been the second one, and that would have been sometime around midnight or 11:30 or something like that. It came. So he would have told me that. Well, the time has to be somewhere between 9 o'clock or whenever those and. Yeah. Oh, right. Good thing I remembered. Sorry.
That's all right.
Right. So, around 9 o'clock is when that I was told to install to go ahead and we spoke. I spoke with he put me on a 3-way call with Mr. Ali, Qasim Ali, and I joined that call, and then in that call, right, we were saying, well, okay, Catherine, go ahead. They want to, LMCS wants to install a riser, right?
Yeah, we're moving away from what I want to know. I think we're going to get to that in due course, but can I just understand? You were told, stand down.
Yeah.
You were told a camera is on its way, boroscope, right?
So,
Correct?
correct. So
Can you remember when Mr. Piper told you that?
that would have been around the same time, around 9 o'clock or so.
Around 9 o'clock, you
Yeah,
understood a camera was
yeah,
on its way.
yeah.
I think
I
it must
don't
have
know
been a
if I
little
wrote
before
it.
that, but never mind.
Yeah.
If you look at your statement, you see that at paragraph 19, at circa 7:35, I received a call from the vessel Spearfish saying that they have an ROV,
Yes.
an underwater robotic vehicle, I think,
Yes.
connected to a ship.
But
I went to the LMCS supervisor, Mr. Farah, and asked him to communicate directly with the vessel. Yes?
yes.
The ROV was too big to fit into the pipe and will not work.
Yes.
Around the same time, then paragraph 20, around the same time, representatives of Professional Inspection Services Limited arrived on the barge with a boroscope.
Yes.
Right, so this is around 7:35, yes?
Well, yeah. Around that.
Sadly, nobody bothered to tell them that their boroscope was going to be too big for the pipe.
Well, the issue was the light also. The light intensity wasn't enough.
So there was no light on it, and
Yes.
it didn't fit.
Well, the tether line was only 100 feet, yeah?
Oh, the ROV didn't fit, right.
Yeah.
In any event, you were talking about cameras at about 7:30.
We were talking about the first camera, yes.
Yeah. When did you first get a camera into the pipe?
The first time? That would have been around midnight.
What are we talking about?
That's paragraph 28.
6 or 7 hours after Mr.
28, yeah.
After Mr. Boudram has come out of the pipe.
Yeah, that's paragraph 28, yeah.
And in that time, that is the time between Mr. Boudram coming out of the pipe, you're being on site around 7-ish, through to this time when the camera finally did get into the pipe, the basic order was no diving.
From around 7 o'clock, I can't speak to whatever happened before,
No,
right?
of course not.
But from around 7 o'clock, I passed the instruction. They were still diving. I can't really see what time LMCS stopped diving, right? But from around, because in that time I remember Andrew Farah asking me about tanks and stuff too, right? So sometime after 7, and they were continuing to dive, right? So that's the sequence.
You mean they were continuing to dive in spite of the fact that the instruction was not to?
I saw them in the water, yes.
Yeah, well, they were in the water. Slightly different. But anyway, the instruction, which is my question, was no diving between 7 and when this camera finally arrived.
Yes.
That was Paria's position at the IMT.
That was the instruction, yes.
Yeah. Did you agree with that?
So, as mentioned before,
Did you agree with it?
not to dive?
Yes. That there
Yes.
should be no diving for a
Yes.
period of 5 hours
Yes.
in the immediate aftermath of
Yes.
Mr. Boudram coming out of the pipe. You
Yeah.
agreed with that position? did you?
Yes.
You did. All right. Thank you.
As a member of the IMT, you knew they wanted the camera to see the condition inside the pipe.
We wanted the camera.
They wanted a camera to go into the pipeline to see the condition within the pipe.
And to ascertain risk, yes.
Yes. As a member of the IMT, did you tell Mr. Piper that we could see the condition in the pipe through Mr. Boudram and Mr. Kurban?
And it's the same question as before. I did not tell Colin Piper anything first-hand knowledge or so about the conditions in the pipe as reported by Mr. Boudram or Mr. Kurban, right?
Ms. Balkison,
Yes.
your role as a member of the IMT, would you not agree with me, was not merely as a conduit pipe to give messages to and from. You had a role to make assessments and, if necessary, make recommendations. Not so?
I had a role also, because you pointed it out to me what Colin said, to also make a critical assessments. Yes.
Yes, to make assessment.
Yes. Yes.
Where you were that day, did you consider if these men in the pipe, their lives had to be saved, quick and urgent action had to be taken to rescue them?
Yes.
Did you consider that you all took quick and urgent action?
We took quick and urgent, hold on, because quick and urgent action to try to de-risk going inside a pipeline that had oil, right? And also We did not know what was the cause of the incident, right? So if it is, I could turn it around and say, Paria also took action by telling LMCS not to dive. Paria also took action to say, listen, hold up. Are you sure you want to dive in there? Because these are the risks too, huh? Someone's lives could be lost, huh? It's a balancing act, right?
It might be a different balancing act if it was your father that was in the pipe or your son. I think we'll take a break there.
No, that's not fair.
No, is there an objection to that?
Because
Sorry, I have.
I don't think it's fair with the greatest of deference to do that to the witness. We on this side representing Paria has been respectful and sensitive to Mr. Ali and all of that. It's only fair that we extend the same respect and deference to Paria's witnesses who would have been on the obvious. It's not a family, yes, but she's a human being, as Mr. Ramada would say.
All right, you made a point.
do you know my
No, of course. No, it's not my intention. I say straight away, it is not my intention to upset anybody, and I have been meticulous in trying to avoid doing that. And of course, I'm very sorry that you are upset by this, Ms. Balkisun. But part of the risk analysis must include the person being willing to go into a pipe and take a greater risk. I cannot divorce myself from the fact that if it were my son, I would take a risk that I might not if it were not my son. And that is a perfectly reasonable, just a moment, Ms. Barkisu, it is a perfectly reasonable factor to take into account. And I simply ask in the question whether or not there were willing people prepared to enter the pipe and that risk, whether that was factored into deciding whether to prevent people from going into the pipe. That is all I am interested in ascertaining. It's certainly not designed, and I regret deeply that Ms. Balkisun is upset by it, but it does seem to me that it is a relevant factor, because everybody who has a child or a father would wish to make a different decision to the professional who may not be prepared to enter a pipe. You might be prepared to risk your life far quicker if it were your son or your father than you would if it was a stranger. That is a factor. And to prevent somebody from being able to do that, even if they're putting their own life at risk, considerable risk, is a big step. And that is the only purpose for which I asked that question. And I'm sure, Ms. Barkison, I'm sorry, I apologize to you personally. I don't want to upset you, but it is a factor and something which I'm interested to know whether it was calculated as part of the overall assessment. That's all I'm asking, all right? It must have been difficult for you, of course it was. All right, we're going to take a break there. We'll come back. If you go with the usher, he'll make sure you've got some fresh coffee, all right? Please go with the usher, with this gentleman here, all right?